Ancient Egyptians' technology was nowhere nearly as advanced as ours is today. This is mostly because they had a lot less time to do so. They used bronze tools instead of copper tools because they're a lot better and easier to work with. The ancient Egyptians also had many items that we still use today, such as the clock and a 365-day calendar. Now that's impressive.
Ancient Egyptian art was an articulate craft. They made many sculptures of jackal and falcon-headed beings, often dedicated to the gods or the pharaohs. In fact, almost all art in ancient Egypt was dedicated to the gods or the pharaohs, including sarcophaguses to hold the body, which were elaborately decorated with gold and carvings. They also made glass beads that they used for jewelry, although there was no evidence of glass blowing. They simply melted it down and shaped it into beads. Now, ancient Egyptian art was an intricate part of life, and they wouldn't have given it up for anything.
Oh, hello there. You know, not many ancient Egyptian children were able to go to school. Only the children from wealthy families were able to train as scribes. Since scribes were the only people who could read or write, many high-ranking government officials were scribes. One scribe named Horeb even became pharaoh. The most common form of ancient Egyptian writing was hieroglyphics, although there were up to 3 different types of scripts that they used.
Okay, so I'm Austin Harvey, and I'm here to do the social classes. The lowest was soldiers, farmers, and tomb builders. The second lowest were craftsmen. Third lowest was scribes. Middle were priests and doctors. Third highest were nobles and high priests. The officier, and then the pharaoh was the highest. Yeah.
Oh hey there, you caught me practicing my vocals. Ancient Egyptian clothing. The ancient Egyptians wore clothes mostly made of linen. A normal clothing for men was a kilt, and for women it was a straight dress with broad straps. Although richer people had more elaborate styles. They usually went around barefoot, but wore sandals on special occasions. Children at the age under 6 usually went around without clothes. They wore lots of jewelry and makeup in honor of the gods.
Did you know for games in ancient Egypt they would play Kuza Luisa, which is known as leapfrog? They would also play tug of war and board games. They would also have festivals with dancing and drinking. Lots of people thought that the Egyptians were sad and solemn because they were always preparing for death.
Warfare in Egypt was pretty much non-existent until the Hyksos invasion. Now the Egyptians began to develop a military that used very, well, cutting edge for their time, such as knives, maces, and clubs. They also used bows, arrows, and battering rams. Their defenses were mostly consisted of shields. But really, ancient Egyptian warfare developed into a powerhouse when Imhotep III took over. He built the army into thousands of people that were forced into it. Now, they invaded Nubia and various smaller regions around Egypt, but never really conquered anything major. And that stayed the same until Alexander the Great conquered Egypt, roughly about a few hundred years before Christ was born. And ancient Egyptian warfare was never the same since.
Hi Nolan, I was wondering if you wanted to go jellyfishing and maybe make some Krabby Patties.
No, SpongeBob, I can't. I'm here to talk about ancient Egyptian economics.
Oh, okay, I'll catch you on the flip side.
They mainly traded, educated, and farmed. Their greatest natural resource was the Nile River. Ancient Egyptians' wealth mostly came from agriculture, even though their techniques were not very efficient. They traded with other cultures such as ancient Greece and Rome. Their main source of energy back then was muscle power.
Ancient Egyptian transportation was fairly simple. They didn't need to get around much, but when they did, they walked. In later years, they domesticated animals such as donkeys, camels, and horses. Other than that, they dug canals in the Nile River to use boats to get around.
The ancient Egyptian climate and geography is quite different than here in Canada. Egypt is in the northeast of Africa, and it's roughly 1 million square kilometers. It's very hot and dry, and the Nile divides Egypt in half. The months of winter are November to April, and there's barely any rain.
Now, when you think of architecture in ancient Egypt, the first thing that comes to mind are the pyramids, and there are over 90 of them. The most prominent of which is the Great Pyramid of Giza, which stands over 450 feet tall and has a 13-acre base. Each block in the average pyramid weighs about 2.5 tons. Now, the Egyptian housing was much simpler and was made of mud bricks, and sticks, just piled together to make quite a sturdy lodging. Now, they also made many sculptures about gods, festivals, to decorate around the pyramids and the housing to salute to the gods.